Back to Seconds Out. My name is Ayman here in Bournemouth. It is a real pleasure to be joined by the Daily Star's Chris McKenna. Chris, had to pull a few things to get you on camera, but it's great to have you here. How you doing?
I'm good, mate. Yeah, good. Enjoying the sunshine in Bournemouth. Not too good for my pasty Irish skin, but got the sun cream on today, so all good. And looking forward to the fight this weekend.
Looking forward to the fight indeed, as are a lot of people, especially the people in Bournemouth. Bournemouth have been starved for big nights. Chris Billam-Smith has been bringing it back with boxers since he's moved over to here. But what do you think of his prospects are against Lawrence Okolie, who's obviously proved someone to be a difficult prospect to beat?
Look, as you said there, Lawrence Okolie is very hard to beat. But if there's one man that knows a lot about him, it's Billam-Smith, because obviously we know he's been in the gym with him for so long. They've had the same trainer, so they've sparred a lot of rounds. So deep down, Chris will know how tough this challenge is going to be. Lawrence he's a big guy. He can be awkward. He's hard to get onto, which is going to be the challenge for Billam-Smith. How are you going to get inside those long arms? How are you going to, when you get inside, then work and do damage? Because there's no point in just getting in and not being busy enough. And I think that's going to be the challenge for Billam-Smith, is getting inside, but then doing damage when he's in there and trying. Because we've seen people in the past get inside on Okolie, and then he smothers them. And that's when we have these kind of fights where they don't really kind of ignite with Lawrence. But that's because of his dominance. He can be hard to watch at times, but it's also because he is such a fighter who controls the fight so well. Which is incredible for a guy of his experience when you think of how little amateur kind of experience he's had. But I thought Lawrence improved greatly under Shane McGuigan. I was surprised when he left. He obviously has his reasons for that, and it's an amicable split. Sorry, is the word I was looking for. So that Shane will know the tactics, will know kind of Lawrence's weaknesses, but Lawrence will know all of Billam-Smith's weaknesses as well. So that makes for a really interesting fight in my opinion. Obviously, the favourite is Okolie, but hometown crowd and that, we don't know what, maybe that might give it a little edge to Billam-Smith as well.
In terms of the cruiserweight opposition, is this about as good of a chance as anyone will have of beating Lawrence Okolie at cruiserweight, given that relationship that he's had with McGuigan in the past, that he knows him inside out?
It's hard to know. There is other guys in the division. Opetaia, I can never say his name right. He's very good. But yeah, Billam-Smith has that inside knowledge, so that gives him a bit of a benefit going into it. I don't think we're going to see Okolie too much longer at cruiser. I think he's been desperate to unify. Doesn't seem like those fights will happen, and I think he's desperate to get up to heavyweight and those big kind of money fights in the future.
Lawrence has to perform or at least look good in the win if he gets it, or even in the loss, given that he's moved over to Sky Sports and Boxer, and his last performance against David Light, who a lot of people in the boxing fraternity said, look, it will get this guy out. Didn't. Was a bit of a messy fight as well. You feel that he needs to kind of prove that he can be a bit more of an entertainer?
Yeah, I don't think he feels that. I don't think he's somebody who's too bothered by the criticism, but Sky know, Boxer know, they need to be entertaining fights. There's no point in having fights that just kind of going through the motions. It's not going to do for viewers. People are going to switch off, especially this weekend. They've got loads of choice. He's going to have to be more entertaining, but he has that in his locker because he has that power. But I don't think he's somebody who's going to risk coming out of his style just to entertain people. He's going to do what he does. If he gets the knockout, he gets the knockout. The pressure is going to come to the outside where people are desperate to see him knocking more people out and making more statements. This will be a tough one to do that because he's in against proper good opposition.
Moving on to some of the bigger talking points, nothing more bigger than Spence and Crawford finally over the line. Innovative rematch clause, and that being a two-way rematch clause, which you've been in boxing more longer than I have. I can't remember that being ever inserted in. But the bottom line is, for boxing fans and boxing in general, that this fight is over the line. Is there a fighter that you favour in this fight?
I don't, and I think that's why it's a great fight. I was thinking about it, and friends have been asking me and stuff, who do you think's going to win? And I don't actually know. Like, Spence is a great fighter, but he's probably never had this massive, huge fight against another, like, somebody who is still at the peak. And so I think this is his really kind of, it's mad to say, not a coming out moment, but a moment where we're going to really know how, like, good is our Spence. And we've seen Crawford in against some top guys. I just can't pick him. Maybe as the fight gets closer and you get glimpses of what's going on in the training camp, it might become. But looking at the body of work both have, both have got great records. Some good wins. This is the fight we've wanted for so long. It's happening. It's probably a year or two later than we would have wanted, but it's not 5 or 6 years too late. I think that's the main thing. And it's not at like middleweight. I think that's another important thing. It's at welterweight. It would have been a shame if they had gone up and then they fight when they're older at light middle. And we don't. Is that their best weight? We don't know. I think welterweight is both their best weights. I know Crawford's come up through the weights a bit, but I think this is both at the strongest. They're a little bit, not say past the peak, but not at the. I think the peak of them for both was just pre-COVID, but we're still getting it now, and I think it's going to be a great fight. It's brilliant that we hate rematch clauses so much so often. But it's great that there is this here, so we're nearly guaranteed that we're going to have 2 fights in 2023 between these two, which after waiting, like the old adage, London buses, you wait so long and it comes along, and we've got it now.
The consensus is that this is one of, if not the biggest fight in boxing to make for a long, long time. I don't know if my radar is slightly skewed, but when the Gervonta Davis vs Ryan Garcia pay-per-view numbers were announced, I felt somewhat underwhelmed by them, considering that was another fight that was long in the pipeline. Is there maybe a projection you feel how big this pay-per-view will do in terms of numbers, a ballpark figure, because of the want of it from boxing fans for a while?
It's never going to get near like Mayweather-Pacquiao numbers, because Mayweather-Pacquiao, yes, that fight was way past itself. It was 6 years too late or 5 years too late, whatever it was. But they were both massive mainstream names. And I don't think even Spence and Crawford are massive names, but they're even not on their level. So I think you're looking at more probably the numbers of what Canelo Golovkin won did, which I think was around 1 million. I can't remember. But I think that's the numbers you're looking at, which is massive considering like it's still big. Maybe it'll push towards 2. I know people have said in the past, Tyson Fury will sell 2 million pay-per-views in America. That will never happen. He sells big numbers in the UK. But Spence and Crawford, maybe it'll push towards 2. And I think that would be a hell of a number. And I think Showtime and that would be delighted with that, or PBC. Is it on Showtime? I think it is, yeah. So I think that would be a massive number for them. But nothing's ever going to touch Mayweather-Pacquiao. That was just an anomaly.
Speaking of Tyson Fury, speaking of might never happen, a lot in the mix in terms of the heavyweight division, in terms of a fight or some sort of tournament going on in Saudi Arabia, which might never happen, might happen. Also in between, the fighters might have a fight in between, or might never happen too. But what is the current status, as far as you know, in terms of Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, whether they're going to be having a fight or waiting for this much mooted tournament in Saudi Arabia?
I think there's probably pressure from Saudi that they all wait, but I think the fighters aren't. Well, certainly some of the fighters are not keen on that because they want to be active. I know Usyk's got a mandatory with Dubois, and yesterday the purse bids were done for that. So he's going to fight, it looks, in August 12th, I think Krasiuk said. So that's good. Tyson Fury, I think, needs to be in the ring. He needs to be active. He needs to be in the gym with a focus. And I still think he may fight this summer. There was obviously a lot of doubts about it because it's gone so quiet, and we're looking at who might be available. I think he will fight. I'm not sure about Australia. I know there's a bit of noise coming there because he's been out there this week and he's probably been speaking to people and they've probably been offering him the world, and maybe something will come to fruition for that. As far as I'm aware at the minute, nothing concrete's coming from that, and that's when you really know when a contract arrives or a proper offer. At the minute, I think the plan is still that he fights in the UK, but that may change if a big offer does come from another country. Who that's going to be against, I think you'll find it won't be an elite name. I think it'll be maybe a lesser opposition, just to keep him active, keep him busy, and get him. And hopefully that this fight against Usyk then happens in December if Usyk comes through the Dubois fight unscathed, and then Joshua Wilder, hopefully that happens. Joshua, I think there's people want him to fight in the summer. I think Eddie Hearn wants him to fight. I imagine DAZN want him to fight. They want more subscribers. They've given him a massive contract. I imagine Derek James wants him to fight to get him back in camp and improve under him again. But whether Anthony Joshua is thinking, well, do I risk it? Who do I fight? Dillian White's a great fight. I think it's perfect for him because I think it gets him back out, it gets him in. It's a name that will sell, will do big numbers, and it's a fight he should win, and he should look good in it. And then I think that perfectly sets up the Wilder fight. I think he should definitely fight before he goes in against Wilder. He fought against Franklin. It wasn't the kind of thriller everybody expected. So I think people need to see a bit more from AJ. So it'd be good that if he could get out again before the summer. But will it happen? I'm not sure at the minute.
Okay, obviously, that's all stemming from getting towards this Saudi Arabian tournament. But would the likes of Opetaia and Demsey McKean be somewhat underwhelming if Tyson Fury was to step into the ring in between that fight?
Yeah, it's always going to be underwhelming, isn't it, when it's not a big name? And we know how good Tyson Fury is, so we know that these level of fighters are not going to beat him. They're just not going to be able to step up in the levels unless something absolutely mad happened and Fury got injured or Fury just didn't bother training. He's the elite heavyweight at the minute. He's the number one. So these guys are not going to be able to beat him. People are going to know that going into the fight. So people are going to go, well, why is he having it? It's fine if he has it, I think, as long as the Usyk fight definitely happens in December. Like, I suppose it would take so much to get done, it won't happen. But if he announced, right, I'm fighting so and so now, it's not the fight everybody wants, but Usyk's definitely happening in December. I think people will go, okay, we'll accept this. We know it's coming. It has to happen there because that's where the money is. Fair enough. I think people may react a bit negatively to it if they do it, and then there's still no definite that's going to be Usyk, and I think that'll be the problem. But I would rather it's a Demsey McKean and a boxer rather than some sort of nonsense of bringing in a UFC fighter and that, because you can talk about Demsey McKean's level and whatever that be, he's a boxer. He would be better at boxing than anybody who would bring in from MMA. So these novelty fights I wouldn't like to see. It won't be the fight everybody wants to see if it's Demsey McKean, but at least it's still a boxer.
Speaking to Wally Downs a few months back, he told me that look, it's a real issue, Tyson Fury going on social media and insulting the likes of Krashuk and Igor Klimas if he's trying to make these fights. How big of a problem is it if Tyson continues to do those things over social media to make the fight?
It is a problem and it's not a very good look, but it also gets interest. And it depends on how personal the stuff is. If it's just calling them stupid names as he does, yeah, it's not a great look, and I don't think he should do it. But is it really damaging it? Probably not, because it probably gets people interested in who is Alex Krasny, why is he slagging him off, so the general public maybe don't know who he is. He's Usyk's promoter, and look, we'd rather with all that social media nonsense just doesn't happen and we just get fights signed. I'm not going to say as journalists we don't want the news, because we're often digging around trying to find out, so we don't want it just announced. We want to try and find out what's happening. So I'm not one of those that says, oh, I wish fights would just get announced and we didn't know about it, because then you're thinking, well, probably didn't do my job great if that just happens, but it does happen. But yeah, all the social media noise just gets annoying after a while, and especially with Fury, and people are just desperate to see him in the ring, because he's at that age now where all the talking, all the social media, yeah, great, but we need to see you in the ring because you're getting older. Eventually, Father Time's going to catch up with him. We want to see him in the big fights. We want to know who the real best in the heavyweight division is, and that's by him fighting Usyk.
Things I want to touch on. We've had another. It feels like there's been somewhat a spate of these, and maybe some speaking to the likes of Johnny Nelson beforehand. He said he predicts there'll be more positive results happening in boxing. The most recent one being Hannah Gabriel's Clarissa Shields' opponent testing positive for a performance enhancer. Lou DiBella is now given his or Hannah Gabriel's reason for that, but I just wonder how you feel about the current state of boxing with the recency and the amount of positive tests there have been in the sport.
In a weird way, positive tests are a good thing because you're catching people. Or at least you're flagging it up, and then you have the investigation and you find out if it was a proper failed test or was it a mistake or was it an error. That you should really have failed tests. If you look at cycling is often known as one of the dirtiest sports because they get a lot of failed tests. But that's because they're doing drug testing properly. They're still getting people getting away with it in all sports. But if you're having positive tests, it shows you're catching people. The more worry is if there's just none. Yeah, okay, in a dream world you go, well, if there's none, everybody must be clean. But in all sport, we know that often isn't the case. So if you're catching people, it's a good thing because one, it's showing that you're doing it properly, that you're doing the testing right, and two, it's also a warning to people that if they are cheating, that you can get caught. If people think that they're not going to get caught, they're going to do it. So when these stories come out, yes, it's bad for the sport's image because people are going, right, wow, there's a lot of drug tests, is there a lot of cheating going on in the sport or what? But it shows that it's working, and it's a deterrent to other people to go, oh, actually, people are getting caught here, I better not do it, I better be honest here and stick to honest. But look, drugs in sport is a terrible thing. It's never good. But I still think if they are testing, if they are catching people, that's good. It's now the process of then going through it and making sure that the proper bans are handed out and stuff like that as well.
Are you able to tell me what your ear on the ground is in terms of Conor Benn's latest to get himself back in the ring after the fallout of Chris Eubank Jr. versus Liam-Smith 2, or Liam-Smith versus Chris Eubank Jr. 2? Eddie Hearn put out like a little time emoji on Twitter to say maybe we'll revisit that fight, and he seems very much keen to do that, although there would be that public backlash maybe if that fight does go ahead. Do you know what the latest is with Conor Benn and his attempt to clear himself?
Not sure there's been any update, because I think a lot of it's now happening behind the scenes on Ben. On the Eubank-Smith, I think from Eubank's side, they're waiting for the medicals on Smith's injury, and then they're waiting for a rescheduled date on that, and if it's definitely going to happen. I think maybe there's some apprehension that there's no rescheduled date yet. I still think that's the fight that Chris Eubank's going to have next, unless Smith comes back with a medical. And I don't know what the latest on his injury is. If he's out for 3 months, maybe then Eubank will look to do something else. But for the minute, they're waiting on the medicals to come from Team Smith, and then they'll make a decision, and then there'll be maybe hopefully a new date for that. On Conor Benn's situation, it's with UCAD. That investigation's ongoing. So there's been nothing since. How quickly that's going to take. See, we've seen with the Amir Khan thing, it can take up to a year, but hopefully it's not going to be that long, because there's such public pressure for a decision on this case. Hopefully that speeds up the process and we get an answer either way, either that he is innocent and he's cleared to fight, or that he's been found guilty. Whatever way, we need an outcome, and we hopefully UCAD get on it and get it done quickly, so we can finally resolve this issue one way or the other and put it behind us.
Final thing, we had some breaking news during this weigh-in, that being that Mauricio Lara has now been stripped of his title. Leigh has the chance to win the title tomorrow night still, and the fight does go ahead. Ball's in Leigh Wood's court here to get the win, I guess, you feel?
Yeah, look, it's not great for the fight itself. It takes a little bit of an edge off it, but Leigh Wood's still got a chance to win his belt back, and that's the most important thing. That's the thing he wants. Yes, of course, he wants the revenge against Lara. I don't know how the weight will affect Lara, so it's hard to know, because without knowing inside his camp, has he struggled with the weight, or has he tried to come in heavy and try and be overweight, and has he given up on featherweight and he's thinking I'll just come in bigger and try and be the bigger man on the night, or has he struggled? Has he had a tough week? Is that going to help? Is he going to be drained on the weight in the ring? So the main thing that Leigh Wood still gets his chance of getting that world title back, and that's the most important thing for him.
Going to leave a lot more on the table, but it's been a real pleasure to finally speak to you on camera. Really good talking to you. Thanks so much for speaking to Seconds Out. Chris McKenna from the Daily Star. Much appreciated, sir.